Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Today's guest has a wonderful, relatable story about how he fell into the trades at 16 years old and never looked back. Zack Hartle is an electrical apprentice instructor at SAIT and also hosts a YouTube channel that teaches electrical code and theory. Zack was only looking for a way to stay out of the classroom in high school, so he found the best course of action was to enroll in an apprenticeship program for work experience. He ended up in electrical, working in new construction before being moved to service at 18 years old. He then worked his way up the ranks and entered several skills competitions. What a journey from being disqualified from the first one to getting bronze in the second one, gold in the third, and finally ending up in a global skills competition in Germany in 2013. At 25 years old, Zack then shifted to instructing and has been working for SAIT ever since, instilling his wisdom in the minds of those looking to better themselves or enter into the industry. Listen in to hear his story and how he got to where he is today with hard work, an insatiable thirst for knowledge, and a drive to pursue new opportunities. As always, this show's not monetized and we don't run ads. We rely strictly on word of mouth from our listeners to grow the show. So if you enjoy this episode, please take a moment to rate it, review it, and share it. The future generations of tradespeople depend on it. They depend on you. So thank you again, and enjoy this episode of the Blue is the New White podcast with Zack Hartle. Welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Today I got a special guest. His name is Zack. Zack is an instructor at SAIT in electrical apprenticeship, and I'm going to pass it off to him right now so he can tell you who he is and how he got to where he is today. Zack, welcome to the show. Tell people who you are.
Hey, Josh. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Zack Hartle. I'm an electrical apprenticeship instructor up in Calgary, Alberta at SAIT, or Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. I guess I got started very young in the trade, kind of by luck, like a lot of people I talk to who got started in the trade, or happen chance, I guess. In high school, actually, I had a friend who did what we call the RAP program here we have in Alberta, Registered Apprenticeship Program. So it lets you work instead of taking options classes in high school. You actually go to construction sites and work. And he did it one year. And I mean, for me, I saw him make a bunch of money and not have to go to cooking class. And I was like, yeah, all right, that sounds cool. So I signed up the next year and didn't pick electrician. It was electrical company said, we'll take a couple apprentices, and kind of got started from there as a 16-year-old, not really knowing a ton. And it kind of escalated from there, right? I was very lucky to be so young and start. Did some new construction and then kind of got shifted into a electrical service role when I was a second year. So just like fresh out of high school, I would have been 18 years old doing service, right? Meeting people in commercial buildings and so did that for a bunch of years, actually for the rest of my career in the field. And I was really lucky when I was around that age too. We have, I know they're kind of all around, but the skills competitions for trades. I was lucky enough to get chosen to compete in a skills competition. And it was kind of, I didn't know a lot about it. You get a random phone call from some guy at Alberta Industry Training who says, hey, you want to compete in a competition? And you're like, I know, 18-year-old kid. You're like, yeah, okay, what's the worst that could happen? And I ended up like getting disqualified because I didn't know anything. It was hooking up PLCs, which I had no experience with, right? I was, lights and plugs, kind of electrician, running pipe. This was programming and installing logic controllers and like programming them on a laptop. So I was like, in way over my head, but kind of opened up the door to a little bit more experience. And I was invited back the next year, but I knew what to expect. So I do some training and stuff. And I ended up competing on a national competition and then a world's competition in Germany in 2013. And then still is with the same company because, I was, I don't know, a little bit afraid of change, I guess, but And then one day an opportunity came up to teach, and my old trainer from my competition actually called me and said, "Hey, like there's this opportunity, and I was like, well, I really originally took it to have an interview. I'd never had a job interview at that point, right? Like, I worked at Sobeys as a bag boy, and then the electrician thing kind of fell in my lap through my high school. So I was like, yeah, I might as well have a job interview. I'm 20 years old at the time, or no, wait, way older than that, 24, 25 when I started at SAIT. So I figured I'd go, and just sounded interesting. So I made the leap, and it's been 4 or 5 years now at SAIT. So teaching electrical apprenticeship, and it's going good. I like it. And big change here this year, shifting online instead of in the classroom. So that's a big change and a challenge, which was always welcome, I guess. So
yeah, seeing a lot of that these days.
Yeah.
Wow, that's super interesting. So I've got a couple of questions, and
yeah,
I know
for sure.
I know that you also have a YouTube channel, which I've been obsessing over and watching myself, which is awesome. So anybody out there listening, definitely check out Zach's YouTube channel. I don't know, is there a link, or should they just Google your name? Or
yeah, just Google Zack Hartle, and you'll find me. It's the guy doing electrical on a black whiteboard, and maybe you'll learn something. Maybe you'll be more confused than when you started, but
that's me. I was definitely confused, but super awesome information. You're definitely very knowledgeable in what you do, and that stands out a lot.
Actually, just hit 1,000 subscribers yesterday. So
congratulations, man. That's awesome. That's a big milestone.
Big day in the YouTube world. So
how long you had that channel?
It's been a couple of years, like 3 years. And originally, back when we were like on campus in person, it was like you do a video here and a video there to supplement this or supplement that. And now that we've kind of shifted online, I've been like trying to go in once every 2 weeks and try and film a couple new videos. And it's tough, right? Like you have different learning styles, and some people can't sit in front of a computer. So really just adapting for that. And, we also do offer an online only, which is no instructor interaction. So those videos really help supplement that. Students are just basically learning from a textbook on their own. So I think those really help with that. And so it's just kind of, I don't know about out of necessity or not, but it's just kind of gotten a little bit bigger. And I mean, it's not big yet. There's guys even at SAIT with bigger channels than me, but still really fun, and it's a good way to engage. So,
and you're imparting wisdom. I mean, what's better than that, right?
That's right.
I mean, that's awesome. And globally at that, I was looking at some of the comments that you had on YouTube, and they're from all over the place.
Yeah. It's surprising where you get random comments from, and what countries and certain videos people are watching, right? I mean, obviously the Canadian code videos is mostly Canada, but lots of the stuff about how electrical equipment works is like all over Asia. And so it's interesting.
That's wild, man. And that's rewarding in itself. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. But I've got some questions about kind of your upbringing and how you got into this. So you said you started young, about 16 years old, kind of by luck in this apprenticeship program. Is this an area of study that intrigued you before that, or were you just kind of one of those in the group of, I don't really know what I want to do the rest of my life?
Yeah, I was that group. I had no idea. I didn't love school. Not good at sitting still. That's been the hardest part about teaching online.
I was just going to say, teachers aren't supposed to say that, man. No, just kidding.
So yeah, I mean, it was just not loving high school. Then here's my buddy who he knew he wanted to be a carpenter. He was like, I'm going to be a carpenter. I'm not wasting my time doing options classes. Not that there's anything wrong with them. He's just like, I want to be a carpenter. I want to do carpentry class. So he signed up for this program. I didn't even know about it because I wouldn't look into that kind of thing in high school. I was just putzing along, and he signed up and he loved it. And I was like, well, I'll give it a try. And it was totally luck. But yeah, my dad was actually a mechanic. Not working as a mechanic so much like when I was a child, but before I was born, he was in the Army and the military, got his mechanic's license there, and then did a bunch of work on like small engines afterwards, working at like different places. So I've been around it. Like I knew it was a career. My mom's an accountant. So, but I think, it was kind of just luck that I got into it, but I had no idea that I wanted to be an electrician. And I remember taking like an aptitude test, like when I went in to talk to the school counselor, and they're like, yeah, let's figure out what trade is best for you. And you take like this aptitude test. And I don't know how a little 10-question test is supposed to tell you this was specifically trades, like which trade is best for you.
Okay.
I'm like, they're all similar on some level, right? Like they're
Yeah.
not, I wouldn't consider, HVAC mechanic very different than electrical, very different than plumbing, right? They all have their challenges and stuff. But yeah, it was like locksmith was number one and electrician was number two. And I can't remember. I think HVAC might have even been number three. And she's like, do you have a preference? And I'm like, I don't know anything about any of them. I mean, so I'm good. I don't know any locksmiths. So
Oh man, that's funny. I mean, you're already doing better than me though. My career placement test in high school said I should be a cab driver.
oh
So,
yeah.
which hey, nothing wrong with being a cab driver. Some of them make really good money.
Oh yeah.
But I still to this day have no idea how they came to that conclusion. Maybe
Yeah.
I fell asleep during the test or something. And
Yeah, that's a weird option to be on one of those
yeah,
tests too. It's not one of
I
those
know,
things
and that's no joke either. I think I still have that paper in my mom's basement. I
yeah.
tell that story every once in a while. I should really get that out so people don't think that I'm shitting them. But
Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah.
so I'm curious. A lot of kids in high school, especially when they have at least one parent that kind of does white collar work. You said your mom was an accountant, but your dad was a mechanic, so that kind of you had a balance of kind of both worlds. It sounds like were they pushing you to go the college route, or were they just kind of like do what makes you happy? How was that dynamic?
Yeah, no, my parents they were really good. There was no, you have to do university, it was totally whatever you want, we'll support you. My mom not knowing wasn't like, try a trade. But when I told her, I'm like, I'm going to do a trade, she was like, that's amazing. Like, that's an excellent
That's awesome.
opportunity. No, I think it's more, my dad didn't go like a traditional apprenticeship route. It was like in the military, kind of
Sure.
got his mechanic that way. It wasn't like, I want to be a mechanic. So maybe a little bit of that. And my dad, of course, super supportive as well. But yeah, there was no pressure one way or another. I mean, the pressure was you should try hard enough in school to have good enough grades that you could go to university if you want,
There you go. Yeah.
which advice I didn't listen to. But, you know,
I think there's a lot of us out there that didn't listen to that advice,
yeah.
and certainly not bad advice. Sometimes a lot of what I hear is parents kind of pushing their children to go to university or to go to college because that's the best and easiest and most sure way to succeed, and that's kind of
Hmm.
a lot of what I talk about is look, there's nothing wrong with university. There's nothing wrong with college. There's nothing wrong with that type of education. It's the cost of it, right? And the quality of life that you produce. It's all about the ROI.
Hmm.
So if from the second that you turn 6 years old that you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant or whatever, and college is the way to get there, by all means, you have to take that step. But if you're one of the 90% of the kids that have no idea what they want to do, they just know that they want to be successful and happy, you know that it seems to me to be a little bit outdated advice to push that on students.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. Yeah, I just, there came that time, you're entering grade 12, your parents sit you down and they're like, look, you gotta bump those marks up so your options are open, right? It was not go to university. It was just so your options are open. You can take a couple of courses, try what you want. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to try this electrical thing instead. How do you guys feel about that? And they're like, fantastic. They were like, do something.
Yeah.
And I did. And yeah, it worked out really good. And for me, it wasn't even I'm going to become an electrician. For me, when I started, it was yeah, I'm going to go work for 4 months instead of go to school. And then
Yeah.
I'll take all my core classes and hate that for the next 4 months. And when I finished, I was like, well, I guess I kind of liked it because I missed doing it. I miss getting up early every day, and I missed the hard work that I had. I mean, my first year, I was digging trenches. I spent 6 hours a day with a shovel, and the other 2 hours on my hands and knees gluing pipes together in a trench. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I missed it. Right? It was really a changing experience for a young guy. Right? Like it kind of made me who I am. Right?
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I resonate with that a lot. I talk a lot about what it kind of, not necessarily the skills necessary to become a tradesperson or get into the trades, but the characteristics that the trades actually build, the personal characteristics. You alluded to it, digging trenches. Yeah, sure. It doesn't sound like great work when you're in high school, right? If somebody tells you that you're going to go to work digging trenches, the thought of it, if you've never done it before, is, well, why the hell would I want to do that? But then once you do it, and once you're in it, and for me, it was the satisfaction, right? It was being able to go home, lay my head on the pillow at night and feeling like I accomplished something, and I don't know, it builds a set of fundamentals in you personally when you're at such a impressionable age,
Mhm.
right? That it kind of sets the tone for what it takes to be successful. I mean, you're talking about hard work, perseverance, tenacity. All of these things are necessary in the skilled trades to move up and to be successful. And then they're transferable, right? If you go through the skilled trades, whether it be an electrician or in construction or HVAC, whatever, and you get to a point where you're like, I really don't like this. Well, the fundamentals that you learned while you were learning that trade, you can take anywhere. Hard work,
Mhm.
perseverance, and tenacity, you need to be successful in no matter what you do.
Yeah, and that's like, I don't know, it's one of the biggest things I try and like talk about with my students, especially now working online. Like, you guys are using, Microsoft Teams all day, every day to learn. We're making you use all these Microsoft like that goes on a resume. Because if you're looking for any other job, what's one of the qualifications? Experience with Microsoft Office. Well, here you go. Here's that chance. Yeah, you might not like learning this way, but it's a learning experience, and you're getting more out of it, right? So, in that personal accountability, like, let's be on time, let's work hard, like. So I'm a big proponent of all that. I think it is really important.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So you said you started in new construction and then you went to service, and you were about 18 years old at that time.
yeah.
So first of all, what led to that transition? Was it just in the job that's what they needed, so
Oh,
that's where you went?
yeah. When I started, it was like a 2.5 year project, and I started when it was like a field
Oh, okay.
and digging trenches, laying pipe, and then I went back to high school for the 4 months there to finish grade 12. That's how the registered apprenticeship program works. You do one semester of work experience, and then one semester in school doing like your math and science classes.
I see.
So that counts as credit for your options classes, which is a really good program. And yeah, when I came back, it was like a little bit closer to finish, but I was running pipe and pulling wire and stuff like that. And then they just didn't need that. Well, I then was a second year at that point. Then they're just, the job was kind of finishing up, and they were transferring people out, and worked at a big company. It had like 300 electricians. So it was, okay, we need two guys here, pull names out of this bucket of names and move them around. And ended up moving into service, which was good. And like, they just needed a guy to carry pipe up and down a stairwell. So here's this second year. But then I ended up staying with that small group of people for 7 years up
Wow.
until I left that company. So working for the city, actually, not for the city as a contractor for the city, but for the same customer the whole time. So, but lots of different work. And yeah, it's both have like their huge advantages, right? I mean, new construction was like, you're dirty, you're in your bibs, hard work. But again, it's like you're putting in a solid 8 hours a day of work, especially when you're digging and laying pipe. And I think it's good to start there. I mean, it toughened me up. I was soft
Yeah.
when I like, soft 16-year-old in high school. But yeah, that tough like shaped me, right? You're working with some of these old gruff guys who you expect to be a tradesman, right? Like, old gruff,
Yep.
kind of unhappy, a little bit mean. It really shapes you. So,
But
and then there's
always
the
to the
other,
point. Always to the point, right?
yeah, yeah, no, and then yeah, there's the younger guys who are always trying to teach you stuff, but it was cool. I really appreciate my progression, right? I didn't jump right into service. I kind of saw a little bit of everything, and I think that's what made me like it so much more. I think too, right? It's a little bit of change here and there. It's always something different. So
Yeah. And there's a lot to be said about that too, being able to have a change of scenery, and stuff like that. And you hit the nail on the head too when with progression. You got it a little bit earlier than I did.
Mhm.
I didn't get into the trades until I was 21, I think,
Mhm.
21. And but you're right. It hardens you up, right? It thickens your skin because
Mhm.
you come across the people that have been doing it for so long, and they, wonderful people in this industry, by the way. I think oftentimes they get a bad rap, right? And people think the old tradesman, and you know kind of list out the characteristics that you did, but almost in a negative light, whereas you spun it into a positive light, which it is. Because I mean, these are the guys that you have no idea the type of intelligence that they have, right? They don't exhibit that physically or verbally, but the type of intelligence that they have is unbelievable.
Mhm.
I've got some guys that work for me, in their 60s, one guy even in his 70s, and the amount of knowledge. I mean, he's one of the smartest guys that I know, and he's in HVAC. You
Mhm.
wouldn't point to an HVAC tech in high school and say, "Oh, I bet you that guy is super smart," because we're not taught to think that way. you
Mhm.
know so it's interesting, and it's really important, I think, developmentally for kids, and even people who are just young adults getting into the trade, to understand that, you know um, because of the people that you'll encounter in the trades, your progression is limitless, and it can go as
Mhm.
quick or as slow as you want it to. It's all
Mhm.
back to that personal accountability, right?
Mhm. Yeah, no, it gives you the choice, right? You can make it a job or you can make it a career. And like me, like when I came in, like who knows how I would have turned out without the trades, but I think it really just like it shapes you, it makes you into this person, and it definitely made me smarter. Like it made me so curious about how things work and how this works. I remember working with the same old guy I'm talking about, right? Gruff, seems grumpy, seems unhappy, right? We were literally in a trench for like a month, gluing together these big 4-inch pipes for big feeders. And then one day the foreman comes, "Hey, I need you guys to hook up this temporary transformer service, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like with the journeyman, of course. And he's like, "Yeah, okay." We hop out of the trench and, wipe the mud off our boots. And we went into this sea can, and there was like transformers and panels and all this equipment. And I'm like, I hadn't even spun a screwdriver at that point, right? And I'm like almost a second year at that point. And yeah, he's like, "Okay, we're gonna open this up and open it." And I'm like, wow, like this is way different than everything I signed up for. Like you just until you give it that shot, you don't even see how broad the trade is. And even then, like I feel pretty fortunate, but I have barely like just the tip of the iceberg for what I've seen out in the field. So
Yeah, and you have to, and go back to characteristics, right? You have to go into it like a child goes into anything, right? With just that innate sense of curiosity, because you're so
mhm,
humbled by what you're seeing,
mhm,
and because you walk into one of those rooms, like you're saying, and you can get overwhelmed pretty quick, but it lets you know real quick what you don't know,
oh yeah,
and
it was
you have no
it was a
choice but to
humbling.
confront that, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm all confident in the morning, gluing pipe, like, "Oh, I got this. Being an electrician's easy." And then that afternoon, we're in this sea can with a giant panel with like 30 giant wires hanging out of it. And I'm like, "Yeah, no idea. Didn't know what an Allen key was." My journeyman's like, "Yeah, pass me the 3/8 Allen key." And I was like, "I got nothing for you, man. I'm really sorry." Um,
Yeah, but it's
so,
amazing. It's
yeah.
amazing and that's what I mean when I say you learn quickly. Because in a lot of jobs, especially when you go to college, and you come up in jobs, you're almost in a situation where you can pretend to know what you're doing.
Mhm.
And of course, I'm not speaking about everything, and every person is different, and natural curiosities and stuff. But there's a lot of situations where human ego can come into play,
Mhm.
and you can say, "Oh yeah, no, I got that," and then you can kind of figure it out. But that's almost like a false sense of learning, right? Because you don't really
Yeah.
know what you're doing. When you're faced with a situation like that, you can't be like, "Oh yeah, no problem." Hand the guy a monkey wrench when he asks for an Allen wrench. I mean, he's gonna look at you, probably hit you upside the head with it.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. No, it's a little tough to fake your way through some of the hands-on stuff for sure.
Yeah. So talk to me about this skills competition.
Okay.
The first time you went into that skills competition, you said you got disqualified, didn't know what you were doing, had never done anything on the computer
Yeah.
before.
So yeah, like I said, I got this call from some guy I'd never heard of at Alberta Industry Training. Hey, we have these competitions. It was like you meet the qualifications. It was you are under 21 years old and you have one of the highest marks in the province. Like it was right after I did my first year school, and that was how they chose competitors at that time. And it was like, yeah, sure, I'll try. Like I have no idea what he's like. Yeah, it's 3 days in Edmonton and this and that. It's a city just 3 hours north of me. And I was like, sure. Didn't know much. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll look it up, do a little Google search. And I'm like, okay, I must be in electrical wiring. So I'm like, okay, read the description of what I need to do. I'm like, oh, well, I've never stripped this type of wire or that type of wire. By this point, I had done a little bit of circuitry and pipe bending and stuff. And so I go to Home Depot and buy some of the stuff and start practicing with it and go up to Edmonton for the competition. And I'm here at the electrical competition. They're like, yeah, you're not on our list. I'm like, well, that's not good. And then right behind them is the industrial control competition. And they're like, oh, are you Zack Hartle? I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, well, you're over here. Do you have your PLC and your laptop? I'm like, well, no, I don't. What's that? Like, I know what a laptop is, but, and then luckily, like super fortunate, there was the trainer, one of the instructors from SAIT was there. He's like, yeah, I got an extra PLC and laptop for you. Like, here you go. And I'm like, that's great, but
how do you turn this on?
I don't know what this equipment is still. So I muddled my way through, and the first portion of the competition is like installing different wiring methods, conduit and cables and different switches and stuff on a wall. I muddled my way through that. And then the second day is where you kind of hook it all up to the logic controller and, hook up 100 little wires, and then you program it on a computer. And that was kind of where I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm at a point where I can't progress. And one of the technical committee members came over and they're like, look, we can't really help you, but if you want us to, like at this point, you're not going to win, which I was like, yeah, obviously, we can kind of teach you some stuff if you want. One of us will just sit down and spend a couple hours and teach you. And I was like, yeah, I'm on board. Like, I'll take last place to learn this. Like, it was so interesting. I saw these other 4 competitors, like wiring stuff up and sitting at their computer. And I was like, well, yeah, is this electrical? Are these guys electricians? Like, what's going on here? And so that's kind of how that happened. And then the next year, if you're still age eligible, you just get invited back. So I was like, yeah, next year I'm going to train. So I got in contact with the trainer from SAIT and worked. And I mean, I did okay the next year, not great. And I think I got 3rd or something like that. And then the final year was 2012. That's when I got gold. Pretty cool. I mean, I hadn't worked at this at work. So it was all after hours training, working with my instructor from SAIT. Won provincials and then got to go to nationals, which ended up being in Edmonton again. So back to back in Edmonton. And and then that kind of led to a world skills competition, which was held in Germany in 2013. And that was a whole different beast of training. And like I'd put in, 40 hours for the provincials and the nationals. And then for worlds, it was super lucky. My company was really good. Like I mentioned, big company. They paid me, I got 3 months to train full time. The instructor at SAIT we set up on campus in like an empty classroom, built these walls, and got to work with some different industry partners to help train too. And it went really well. Yeah. Trained for 3 months, went to Germany and competed. And so.
Wow. That sounds like a great experience. And the quote that you said that sticks out with me the most, and I think that this is applicable for all walks of life, is I'll take last place to learn this. I mean, I don't know that you realize that the type of impact that statement has, at least, because that's what I took away. And I think that's what people need to understand, when you're learning something, anything new, be willing to take that last place to learn it. That's just fantastic. So you're spitting wisdom all over the place, man. I don't even know if you realize, but that's important, especially since, once you started explaining the progression of that, going back, taking 3rd, going back, getting gold, and then being able to compete in a global competition in Germany. I mean,
And that's like, that in itself is such a humbling experience, right? Like you go in and you're like, oh, I'm the best. I'm the best in Canada. I'm so good. You like got, I think my score was like 61% out of 100 or something. And I won gold. I'm like, oh, I'm the best. And then you train for 3 months and you're like, oh, I'm the best. And then you go and you're like, I think it was something like ninth place. And I was like, yep, that's, but no, it worked out. Like I mean, these world competitions, I mean, they've, there's something else. Like the people from other countries are training for years, some of them. And so it's a very humbling experience, but also I'm proud. Like I got, it's called a medallion of excellence, which means above in the top 20th percentile, or I don't know, something like that. But yeah, it's a pretty big deal in Canada anyways. So not like a big deal that people know about it, but a big deal in the very small skills circle in Canada, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Going to another country and competing in this competition. And there's people from all over the world here, right? So I mean, there's language barriers when talking to people, but the competition itself and the skills that you're learning, that's almost a universal language, isn't it? Especially in being an electrician and stuff like that. Are a lot of the what am I trying to say? Are a lot of the calculations, is that really what everybody focuses on? Just
Yeah. So, I mean, the cool thing is like this whole competition was done. Yeah. There was no written English language on any of the instructions, right?
uh
It's all, this is a part, here's a part number, it installs here, here's a dimension in millimeters.
okay.
And then in terms of the programming, like how do you want this piece of equipment to operate? It's a flow chart, right? If this happens, then this happens. If this happens, then this turns on. It's all ones and zeros. So I mean, the language barrier, yes, there was. I mean, luckily the English is the official language at the competition, so there's always the translator after the main person speaks. So it's kind of not the end of the world. I didn't speak German, obviously, but you can kind of piece it together. But yeah, in terms of the competition, like it wasn't so bad. It spent a lot of time again getting very good at reading technical drawings without any written words, without any written descriptions, like read, like
Yeah.
fancy IKEA instructions basically for how to put this all together and piece it together. So
Yeah, another testament to the intelligence of the skilled trades community and the things, because it sounds to me like what you were looking at uh, is almost a universal language. You don't have to speak a word of it to understand it.
yeah, it's all like, if this happens, then this happens. If this
Yeah.
happens, then this happens. If this happens, this can't happen, right? And I mean, I'm sure you have a similar automation process in a lot of the equipment you've worked on, right? A lot of safeties in place and timers and
Yeah, it's
stuff like
called
that.
don't
So
burn your eyebrows off.
yeah.
That's the number one rule. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's really wild. And I think that's incredibly interesting. So when you got back from that competition, and you're back in the States and stuff, is that when you then started working at SAIT
No,
shortly
so I
after?
came back. And it's funny, like this competition was huge. It was probably one of the biggest things that shaped my career. I learned the most, but really had very little effect on my career. I came back and plunked into a construction site. At this point, I actually went to a new construction site again, which I hadn't been to for several years. But as a sub foreman, so kind of like leading a crew. And that was my first like real chance of working with young apprentices, right? When you're in service, you don't usually get a lot of fresh first years. It's a lot of second and third years. They've been around a bit, they know a bit. But in new construction, it's like there's the first years, they're making the least amount of money, they're carrying pipe. And so I kind of got that chance to work with that young group of, fresh out of high school, whatever it is. And like, so that was pretty interesting. So I came back, did that it was like a 12-month project. We had a big flood in Calgary in 2013. So it was like rebuilding an underground parkade after the flood. So it was really cool to do that. And then that kind of led into actually being a foreman for like service for that customer. So that worked out pretty good. But yeah, it was 2015 when I started in SAIT. So 2 years later, got married in that 2 years. And then I started at SAIT and the rest is kind of here we are. But
Awesome. So you said you were about 25 when you started working at SAIT as an instructor, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's pretty young, I would think, to be an instructor.
Yeah. So, I mean, it all works out. I mean, obviously they can't ask you your age at an interview. So, the requirement was 3 years journeyman experience, right? Working with apprentices and all that. And like I was a journeyman at 20, it was like a couple weeks before my 21st birthday. So super young, like in our province, it's a 4-year program. So yeah, I was a journeyman at 20, like almost 21 years old, and, bought a house that year and everything. But yeah, so I'd been a journeyman then for about 4, almost 5 years before I started at SAIT. So pretty,
Okay.
yeah, super young. It's crazy, like going back over it, how much stuff I accomplished, but even before coming to SAIT, because yeah, I felt young and out of place starting there, but
Yeah.
no one cares. It all works together, right? That's a pretty good place to work for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if there's one thing that I do best, it's extracting memories from people of their past. So, no, that's really awesome. So I'm curious, the program that you started teaching, the electrical apprenticeship program, is it kind of is it like a formal education where you're getting kids of all the same age, or are you getting people of all ages in your classes that you're teaching?
Yeah, so we get a big variety. So apprenticeship in Alberta is very structured. Like, we're fortunate that way, I guess. Like electrician's a compulsory trade, so you can't work as an electrician unless you are like a registered electrician with the province. But yeah, you can start that at any time, right? I mean, I started when I was 16, but yeah, we get lots of people right out of high school. I mean, we've had people in their 60s and 70s who are like switching careers.
Wow.
Lots of people getting a second ticket as an electrician. Yeah, it's such a broad range of students that you get. I mean, in a class of 30, you'll have 10 under 20, you'll have 10 kind of in that 20 to 30 who tried something and it didn't work out, and now this is their career that they're starting, or you'll get people in their second, third career who are coming, right? So you get
Yeah.
such a broad range of students, broad ages, different backgrounds, different previous careers. So
That's wild. Have you ever run into, and I'm curious about this just because you were 25 when you started as an instructor. Was there ever a situation that you ran into, like, maybe somebody in their 40s or 50s came in and they were like, what is this young kid going to teach me? Any adversity like that, or was everybody pretty respectful of the
you
knowledge
know
that you had?
the beard makes you look older.
I
So
wish I could grow one.
yes, I had the beard for quite most of it. Yeah, yes and no. I mean, students, they never cared. They're there to learn. They're there to get their education. They're there to move up the next step. Be there or came in a first year, they want to go out a second year, and so on. They're not. You're teaching them the content. They're not. They're not there to argue with that. And then with the other instructors, it was not a non-issue either. Like, it was, everyone's there for a reason. Everyone kind of puts in their work and does their thing, and there's more about you're the new guy, not the young guy. Other than the
Yeah.
jokes, of course, in the lunchroom about the young guy, like. But a little bit of that in the field, though. Like right before I went to SAIT, and I was, really young journeyman, and I was a really young foreman. Like, I'm very fortunate for that. But again, that was totally luck. My foreman, who was my foreman before, moved to this project and wanted me because he had worked with me for several years. So again, luck and building those relationships with people, like, but some of that, right? You get the journeymen who are like, you're like, okay, we need to run this here and do this, and well, why am I not in charge of this project? I don't know. I'm really sorry.
Right.
And sometimes it turns around and bites them, and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, I had one guy who was, yeah, I'm super mad. We were working on these lifts for like the controls for the lifts and the limit switches. It has to hit all these safety points, and he's like, well, why am I not in charge? And I'm like, look, man, I really don't know. They just called me up. They're like, this is an emergency. They got to get these lifts done. So how about you go wire up those switches, wire them up normally open so they close, blah, blah, blah. And then, 20 minutes later, it's like, I don't know how to know which screws to go on. Well, maybe there's that. Maybe that's why.
This is
But it's funny, yeah. Like, you see a little bit of that entitlement, right? Like, I've been a
yeah.
journeyman for 5 years, and it's like, well, yes, but you gotta grow and you gotta change, right? And that goes back to, you have the choice, right?
Yeah.
Progress or not to progress. And I was always like, anytime I knew, especially at work, never in life, I'm pretty happy homebody and all that. But at work, there's always, here's this opportunity. Do you want to try it? Do you want to work on this special project? My company didn't do a lot of controls after I did the competition. They're like, hey, we got this control job. Do you want to try it? And I'm like, do you care if we make money? Sure, I'll try it. Like, it's our first stab at it, right? Like, we don't have all the equipment, but so it's just kind of that. So a little bit of that, but I think I ended up working with good people, like a lot of luck. And, I think once you build that relationship with people, even if at first they're a little unsure of it, it just settles out. Then you spend 40 hours a week with these people. So,
yeah. And there's a certain undeniable meritocracy, I think, that comes with the skilled trades. Like you said, why didn't I get chosen for this? And then, 10 minutes later, he's asking what screws do you, and so it's kind of like, look, people know, what you know, what you don't, what you're willing to learn, what you're not, and just like any career, with superiors and things like that, I mean, that stuff, they see it. They see it. I see it all the time in my company as well. And, it's, it is what it is. It's all dependent on you, so, that's super interesting. So I'm curious now, when you started teaching at SAIT, was instruction something that you aspired to, or was it something just that it was a new opportunity, you wanted to try it out? And then you ended up liking it, once you did it.
Yeah, it was, like I said, I kind of got the call, you should apply for this. And I was like, I don't know, pretty happy where I am. Like, I liked being a foreman. I was running a bunch of different smaller projects. So I was kind of all over the city doing very diverse work. But I was 8 years at that company, and big company, a little bit of politics, which I, unfortunately get a little riled up about. So I was like, yeah, you know what, I'll apply, change couldn't hurt, and get the job offer. And it was like, well, yeah, I'm going to try it. I'll take it. And, it's, I'm young. I got lots of opportunity here. It wasn't something I'd really thought about. I mean, it's a pretty big interview process, like you would imagine. Like, I mean, they want people who are going to be good at teaching our future electricians, right? So you got to, like I said, you're dealing with a huge, diverse class. The content is like, it's almost irrelevant, right? Like, knowing the technical knowledge is, you can learn it, right?
Yeah.
But it's more it's a people skills job. So I like that, and it was a challenge. Yeah, tried it. And for now I like it, and who knows what'll happen, right? It's not. I don't know if it's the forever thing, but for now I really like it. I like the challenge. It's a cool opportunity. You get to try so many different new things.
Yeah.
Right. All still based around electrical, but now I'm working on different skill set. Playing around with the YouTube and all that. It's different skill set, right? Try new things. Yeah. It's a challenge, right? It's always a different challenge and different problem solving, which I'm really enjoying. So,
yeah, let's talk about the YouTube thing real quick. So, yeah, I mean, and watching some of your videos and now talking to you for the last 45 minutes, I can tell that or at least it seems like you're kind of you're a natural teacher. You have a very good way of being articulate, of explaining things, and that comes out in your teachings. So, is it, before we really dive into the YouTube thing, do you find it rewarding to be able to have that ability to transfer this knowledge to other people who can use it for their own success?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's super rewarding. We have, like I kind of mentioned, our structure here, like they have to go to school in order to progress. So of course there's half your class. They don't care if they're there. They're like, you know what? I'm here for the paycheck. It's a job. Give me my 10% raise. But there's always that group of students who they want to know. They're curious. Why does it work? How does it work? What happens if you do this? What happens if you do that? And like, working with those students is like so rewarding. right? I mean, there's guys who have, there's both ends of the spectrum. There's the guys who are smarter than me who are in class and they're like, well, what happens if you connect it like this? And you're like, I don't know. Like, I'm not, electrical theory is not it's not my forte, right? I'm not an expert in it by any means. I mean, I like you say, I can portray the technical information very well, but I'm not coming up with this stuff, right? I'm like,
Right.
I'm reading from a textbook and then putting it on to presenting it, right? So that's kind of rewarding. Is that challenging? But I think really rewarding is the students who they want to get it. They want to be electricians. It doesn't click, right? So just trying those different ways to get the information across. I mean, our schooling is very theory and code based. It's not so much hands-on skill. So it's very different than what they're doing in the field. So for a lot of them, it's they love their job in the field, but they dread school because they're not so good at the math. They're not so good at reading a code book, which, I mean, they're hard to read, no doubt about it. So kind of doing different methods, trying different things to get the point across, it's fun, right? It's different, and then working again on those like non-hand skills, right? Like, let's try and be on time for class. And, students hate group work. Well, let's do some group work, because when you work in the field, you're working with a group of 4 people. Like, this is not, I'm not making you do anything you wouldn't do if your foreman at work said, go work with these 3 people and finish that project. You wouldn't be like, oh, I don't really I'd rather work alone. It's like, well, let's use this as an experience. And that's what led to the YouTube channel starting is, a couple of guys I work with, they were like, we need to build some supplemental resources for our students so that when they're sitting at home at 7 p.m. and they're struggling with a concept, how do we help them, right? Without answering the phone at 7 p.m. And that's kind of where it started. And there's a group of 4 or 5 of us all with channels on there. And so far it's fun. It's entertaining. And
it's an intriguing layout too that you use. I really like that the black background, you're writing with the colorful markers up there. Something about that is stimulating, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it makes it so you want to understand. I'd like to understand how you do that. Like, do you literally have like a camera behind a board, or how do you do
All
that?
right, so it's called a Lightboard. Basically, it's a big sheet of plexiglass, which has an LED strip around the edge lighting up the glass. And then there's lights on me, of course. And then, the camera's in front of me. So I am writing with my right hand, looking directly at the camera, writing normally, even though it looks like I'm writing backwards with my left hand. It's just camera tricks.
Yeah.
So, just fancy camera tricks. But it's actually, like, I get that question a lot. Like, is it really hard to write backwards? And it's like, no, I'm literally just like if I were to stare at a whiteboard and write. It's easier than teaching in a class because you're not always turning around, right?
No, that's really cool. And you said you had just hit 1,000 subscribers, which is awesome. Congratulations about that. And I think that's fantastic, because you can almost see that as an extension of your class size, right? Because I mean, really all you do on that YouTube channel is teach, so you got 1,000 people that care enough to subscribe because they want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, it's I'd say like most of them are students through our program, and we don't push the channels too hard. Like, they're supplemental. We post them in the video links in our like learning management system. So students have like direct access to them. It's just, we started with YouTube. It was the easiest place to store the videos, really, instead of storing them on like a local server. I mean, YouTube's like, we'll store your videos for free. So that's how it started. And the reach is cool. I mean, you get students from other provinces, other countries, everywhere, like engaging and learning, and it's pretty cool. I mean, no,
that's really wild. Do you have aspirations to grow that network, or is it just one of those things that's kind of like, a hobby right now that
I think it's just a hobby. There's I'm not going to be a YouTube superstar, I don't think.
No, Ryan Kaji made like $25 million last year.
It's a little bit of work, and I just do it for fun. It's really still just filling in gaps of our curriculum, right? We have a very set curriculum with all these objective points that they have to hit. And unfortunately, to really get into it, our program's 8 weeks long. We take in 5 groups a year for 8 weeks. 8 weeks, it's not enough to learn that information and retain it. You're
Yeah.
learning it, you're plugging it onto a multiple choice exam. And so I think the hope here is like, maybe before they come back for the next year, or if they're out in the field and they could deal with something, they're like, oh, Zach had a YouTube channel. I wonder if he had that video, right? To hopefully keep that lifelong learning spirit alive, which I mean, I'm a big proponent of, right? Even when I was working in the field, I was always bugging my company. Can I take courses? Is there courses I can take? I had lots of different random training because I was always bugging our training coordinator for like, yeah, whenever you're signing people up for courses, add my name, right? So I'm a big fan of that. And I've done some courses. I mean, the nice thing about working at SAIT is you can take courses at SAIT, or they'll even support you in taking courses elsewhere. So I've done some business classes and things like that. And so it's pretty cool.
No, that's
focusing on that lifelong learning.
Yeah, that's cool. I like to call it. I think there's a generational shift that we've seen, right, with this emergence of technology, into this almost what I call just-in-time learning, right, where you're in front of something and you're like, I don't know how to do this, so you pull out your phone and you go to YouTube or Google or whatever, and you can literally, have that information at your fingertips. So it's interesting that you brought that up, because I think there's a lot of merit to that. Somebody going through the class, or they're in the field and they're like, oh yeah, Zach's YouTube channel. Let's see if I can learn it right here. It's right in front of me.
Yeah, that's a big thing where like, hopefully the education system shifts that way, but we don't really spend enough time, I don't think, teaching on how resourcefulness, right? How to find the information that you need when you need it, right? We're just like, here's the information, remember it. So it's kind of like I guess the YouTube channel does that a little bit, but it wasn't really the goal. But yeah, I mean, helping those guys learn how to find the information, right? And it's the same with code. You can kind of go about like remembering the code book. Well, that's ridiculous. Let's learn about how to interpret and find different rules in that giant document, right? So,
yeah. All right, one more question for you, Zach, before we wrap it up here. So one of the things that I often push is, that people pursue the type of success that they want, how they define it, right? Because college and university is only one type of success, and if somebody wants it and that's what they want, then of course pursue it. But don't pursue anything that isn't going to lead to whatever your definition of success is, and don't let somebody push you into a definition of success that you don't resonate with. So I'm curious for you personally, thinking about your history, your journey, where you are, where you're headed, how do you define success?
This is hard. I thought about this question. It's not an easy question.
Yeah.
For me, it's not necessarily about progressing. It's about having the option to progress, right? For me, in order for me to consider myself successful, maybe you're happy doing what you're doing and that works for you for a while, but having the option to pursue something else and the option to change and grow is huge, right? And I love learning new things and changing and growing. But my wife, she's not so much. It's not all about progress with her, and it's I don't know, that dynamic keeps it interesting. But yeah, for me, it's the option to pursue what you want to do and the option to grow and change, I think where I'm at with that.
That's awesome. That's a great answer. That's the first time anyone's ever said that on this show.
Yeah.
That's a really great answer, because you're absolutely right. And the other thing is too, that definitions of success change. So having that option available to you makes you ready or able to make that change if you find that your definition changes. So I really like that answer a lot. I think that's and what you've done to this point has led you to that. It sure seems, because you've had these options, in every stage of your progression in your career, which is just great. So wonderful answer to that. But with Zach, Zach, why don't you tell people where they can find you, where they can find the YouTube channel, all of that?
Probably the best spot would be YouTube is Zack Hartle, just the name, or on LinkedIn. Probably, I'm not big on much other social media, but yeah, those two are probably the way if you want to reach out, and it'd be great.
Awesome. Well, Zach, thank you so much for lending me your time today and coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Had a great time.
All right, excellent. Take care.